Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Regular Guy Vikings Hour. I'm so sorry that I didn't have a chance to I haven't done a game review for either the Lions or the Rams game. This is actually going to be an NFL picks, power rankings, and I'm also going to do a scolding. Those are the segments for this particular show. I am this week going to go back and actually review both the Rams and the Lions games together. I'm going to do my game scores for the players and just talk about a lot of other Viking stuff. I might even split it up into two shows depending on like how long all that's going to run. And I think I'm going to make a little bit of a change to the show in that I'm probably going to get rid of doing the live game notes and kind of like, talking back through those on the show, simply because I'm starting to find doing game notes during the game a little bit cumbersome, and I just kind of want to sit and watch the game. So I think as I go through and do my game review, when I watch the film and I do my player scores, I'm going to make some like small notes and stuff as I go through there, and I'm going to kind of call that my game notes. It'll be much shorter. I'm actually going to extend out the Go Look segment significantly because I feel like looking back on things on video is actually, way cooler, way more fun, and more interesting. So that's going to be the way that's going to look going forward. But for this morning, this is Sunday morning. It's 8:20 on the West Coast, so game's starting in about an hour 40 minutes. I wanted to make sure to get my picks out, do the power rankings and all that kind of stuff. But the first thing I want to do actually is I want to start this show off with the scolding segment, which I haven't done in a little while, but I feel like it's necessary because something happened in the Rams game, and then the narrative after the game just kind of really bugged me, and I want to talk about it. So let's run my scolding graphic real quick.
Scolding.
Okay, and what we're going to do now is we're actually going to pull up the browser because I've got a lot of interesting information that I pulled up. So let's go ahead and do the browser here. Okay, so it's on me with the browser. I'm going to pull it up on my site so I can look. Okay, so for the scolding, all right, number one, I got a couple of scoldings. Number one, Coach O'Connell not kneeling on the ball at the 3-yard line at the end of the half. And on that one running play that we ran, Christian Darrisaw injures his knee, and he is now out for the year. Okay, so I'm scolding Coach O'Connell because I'm like, you don't need to run the ball there. You can just kneel out at the half. And yes, I understand it's football. An injury can happen on any given play. But there was just, for me, what's bothersome is just that play was just unnecessary. And so who knows? Maybe Darrisaw was destined to hurt his knee and be out for the year at some point in that game. I don't know that. I mean, I'm not a fortune teller, but I do know that he injured his knee on that particular play, and that particular play was extremely unnecessary and flat out stupid. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to back up my opinion with some facts, okay? Now, what I saw on Twitter was certain Vikings writers coming onto Twitter and telling the rest of us that we're, overreacting to the idea that it was unnecessary to run that play, and that this is the kind of thing that teams do. And I'm here to tell you, no, it isn't. So let's start off right here. I went onto a website, and man, I forget what this website's called. Let me look at it real quick. It's called stathead.com. Okay, and I pulled up their drive finder, and so here are the criteria that I pulled up to kind of prove my point. And again, if you've forgotten about the play, which I'm sure you haven't, the situation was there were 35 seconds left to go in the second quarter. We're down by 7. The punter makes a great punt. And we're down at our own 3-yard line, and there are 35 seconds to go, okay? Now, I know we're not getting the ball to start the half. I don't care. You're not going to drive I don't even know, like the 40 yards or whatever, 45, 50 yards are necessary to even get a field goal attempt off in the 35 seconds. Even with the 3 timeouts, I don't think that it's possible. And I just felt like with the way that game was going, a kneel down in that situation made the most sense. And if you've got analytics or something, for me, analytics at this point have gone way overboard on, it feels like almost every situation, analytics calls for you to go for it. And I'm like, you know what? Stop with that, okay? You don't need to go for it in every single situation. Sometimes you need to be smart. Sometimes you need to understand momentum. Okay. So anyway, getting to my facts now. Okay. So we're on stathead.com. We're on the Drive Finder. My first criteria was, and this is from 2001 to 2024. We're talking about 24 seasons worth of football. Okay. Any team versus any team in the regular season, ending in the second quarter, with the drive starting between 35 seconds or less, and the drive starting inside your own 5-yard line. Okay. The number of actual drives in that situation over the past 24 years is a total of 131 drives, which essentially works out to about 5 to 5.5 a season. Okay. So it's extremely rare. And in those 131 attempts, there were actually 2 scores, which comes out to 1.5%. Okay. One was a touchdown, one was a field goal. Now, as a, the other side of that is that there were actually 8 turnovers in that situation. So you had, and in fact, 2 fumbles. So if you tack on 8 turnovers to 2, or not fumbles, but safeties, that's 10 total negative outcomes compared to 2 positive outcomes. You had a 5-to-1 chance of that situation turning out negatively. And of course, there's no way to really find out whether or not injuries happened on any of these drives, but at the very least, you have a 5-to-1 ratio of negativity to positivity in terms of whether you score or whether you actually take a safety or end up turning the ball over. Okay, so that's number one right off the bat. 131 total drives in that situation in 24 years. Okay, next up, I parsed it down even further. Okay, 2001 to 2024, any team versus any team in the regular season, end of the second quarter, drive starting between 35 seconds or 35 seconds or under, the drive starting inside your own 3-yard line. Okay, 3, that's your 3 or less. That actually drops it all the way down to 64 drives. Okay, so it almost cut in half. Okay, and in those situations, there were 0 scores. 0. So in 24 hours, 24 years in that situation, 0 times a team has scored. Okay, but there was at least 1 turnover and at least 2 safeties. So again, only negative things can happen from this situation. Okay, then moving on to the next one, I excluded the kneel downs. Okay, and it dropped it down to 36 drives or attempts. Okay, that dropped it down from 64. So you're almost halving down again. Okay, so we know that 28 of those were kneel downs. So now you're at 36 drives in 24 years, which is a drive and a half per full NFL season in that situation. Okay, and what happened in those situations? Well, you had 2 safeties, you had a turnover, no scores. Okay, so again, only negative outcomes. All right, so then another thing I wanted to look at was, all right, if you're in that situation, because I saw this coming out of the narrative, is that, oh, it's really difficult to kneel down from the 3-yard line, something bad could happen. I'm like, really? That's your take? Is it something bad could happen on a kneel down, but you're fine with trying to, work your way out of that situation and try and go down for a score, right? Make it make sense. So anyway, I did another search, and I did, again, 2001 to 2024, any team versus any team in the regular season, end of the second or fourth quarter, because I wanted to know the efficacy of a kneel down from the 3 or in. Okay, and I went ahead, so I did second or fourth quarter. I had drive starting between 1 minute and the end of the game at the 3-yard line or less, and then I asked, did the drive end with a fumble, a safety? Did it end with an end of the half or the end of the game? Okay, and we had 160 instances where teams attempted that. Okay, and out of that 160, you actually had 148. If you add these two numbers up, 148 times each ended with the end of the half or the end of the game. Okay, 0 scores again, 7 turnovers, 5 safeties. So you're wondering, well, were any of those turnovers or safeties caused by kneel downs? And as it turns out, no. Okay, because you're starting at 160 here, right? 160 total drives. Then what I did was I did the exact same search information, but then if you see here, I excluded the kneel downs. Okay, so that means you dropped from 160 total drives to 92 total drives. Okay, that's 68. So we're going to do a little bit of math here. Stick with me, okay? So, again, we're back to the 160. So 81 of them finished up with an end of the half, okay? And the other one, that drops down to 45. That's a difference of 36, okay? Then over here, end of game was 67. End of game over here, 35. The difference in that is 32. Okay, so if you combine 36 and 32, you get a total of 68. What's the difference here? 160, 92, that's 68. Which means when I included the kneel downs, 68 times out of 68, a team successfully kneeled down from the 3 or in and got to the end of the game or the end of the half. So, anybody coming at me with the narrative that Coach O'Connell was justified to try and salvage some kind of drive out of that situation, again, think about it. Yes, you have your timeouts, that's great. You're down by 7, you're pinned at your own 3-yard line, you have 35 seconds left in the half. This is a obvious kneel down situation, okay? And I am furious that we lost Christian Darrisaw for the year on a play like that. I am furious about it. And the fact that anybody is going to try, and condescend to me and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about without having their own facts to back it up really ticks me off. And that's why we have a scolding this week for that. Okay, so I'm done. Now we're going to move on to the power rankings, all right? But man, that had me fired up, I tell you what. So let's bring it back to me. We'll come over here. Let's pull up my spreadsheet. We've got the power rankings pulled up. Okay. Let me pull it up on my side. Got a little bit of dry mouth, man. I was heated. Okay, so power rankings headed into week 8. My top 3 continue to not change. They're the 3 best teams in the NFL. Not by a mile per se, but they look like the biggest contenders. Kansas City at 1, Baltimore at 2, Detroit at 3. Okay, now you're moving down to 4. This is where I have Buffalo moving up 1 spot from last week, and I have them up 7 spots overall. They've been playing really well lately. Green Bay is now up to 5, up another spot, and up 7 for the year. They just came off a nice end of the game win against Houston at home. Their new kicker, McManus, made the game winner, and I got to tell you, that was a really smart move on their part to get rid of that Narveson kid and bring in a veteran guy who, he actually hit a 50-plus yarder to win that game, but that's not really what he's known for. He's more known for being just really, accurate and consistent from within 50 yards, and I think that's what they need for that team. They just needed someone to not butcher a game, because, when you look back at that Packers-Vikings game, at Narveson missing those 2 field goals, that ended up playing a huge part in the outcome. So for a team like Green Bay, who thinks they have a shot at the Super Bowl, picking up a veteran kicker was a really smart move, in my opinion, and then he proved them right by hitting that game winner to beat Houston. So they don't have a lot of weaknesses, I have to admit. All right, so I have the Niners dropping down to 6. That's down 2. They were at 4 last week. They lost to the Chiefs. They've been dealing with a ton of injuries, and I think at some point they're going to get back to full health and be a contender. I think the West is still wide open, so there's really no concern yet about them trying to win their division. But they definitely probably won't be as high of a seed as some of the other teams, and so they might have to work harder in the playoffs, but I think they'll still be a contender. All right, I have our Minnesota Vikings. This was before the Rams game, obviously, but I had us staying at 7 from the week before, but that's with us moving up 18 spots from 25 to start the year. So obviously with the way that Rams game played out, clearly we as Vikings fans are going to be very critical of our own team. I don't see the Vikings dropping a ton from a loss like that, and here's why. Is I think a lot of people went into that game thinking, well, look at the Rams record, that's a terrible team. I never truly felt that way. Okay, I started the Rams out in my preseason rankings at number 8. I thought very highly of that team, even though they were very young. But when you have a coach like McVay, and you have a quarterback like Stafford, and you have weapons like Nakua and Kupp, you're going to be competitive and you're going to be good. Okay, so going into that game, and in fact, just something on a personal note was that I could feel the bad vibes going into that game. There was just something about not getting Hawk back, and I don't know, and just Cup and Nakua coming back, and it being a short week, and that last second loss against the Lions. Everything just kind of was a perfect storm of just like blah. And so it wasn't that I was uninterested in the game, because I obviously sat and watched the game and cheered and cursed and the whole thing that I normally do. But I didn't even put on like any Vikings gear. I didn't like do any like pregame prep, where I'm like listening to music or maybe drinking a little. I just felt very just neutral. Just hey, I'm gonna watch this game. Whatever happens, happens. And I just could kind of feel that weird vibe going into the game. The same one I felt before the Jets game. Fortunately, we got out of that one unscathed, and this one we did not. Our defense got handled pretty easily. We lost Darrisaw for the year, so yeah. So I hope that our fortunes turn. But prior to that game, I had us sticking at 7 with just a close loss to Detroit. And I will have us dropping probably maybe 1 or 2 after the loss to the Rams, but I had them as the 14th best team going into that game. I didn't think as low of them as most people do. And again, this is why I do my power rankings the way that I do, is I don't follow national media opinions. I don't base it on who's hot right now, who's cold right now. I don't base it on what do the standings look like. Those things they mean nothing to me. I watch the game. I don't watch all of the games, but I pay attention to the games. I understand what's going on with each team, and I know, like for instance with the Rams, I knew they were down 2 of their star players. Once they get them back, they're going to start playing well again, and sure enough, they did, and they did it against a very good team, the Vikings. So again, it wasn't really a surprise that we lost, but and so I don't see that as bad of a loss as most people. The fact that our defense played the way that it did and some of the decision making, that makes me upset, and when I go back and do my review of the Rams game, those are probably going to be things that stick out for me that I'm going to start to talk about and maybe question a little bit. But I didn't see that as a bad loss. I think that the Rams are a good team. It was in LA. We're still not quite all the way back at full strength. Obviously, we didn't have Cashman, we didn't have Hawk. They got their guys back. So again, I know I talked a lot about this particular spot, but it's because it's my team. So yeah. So anyway, moving on. Okay, so we got the Eagles at 8. I have them up 1 from the week before. They had a nice win against the Giants, and that has them just down 3 overall for the year. They might be starting to put it together. I have a friend who's an Eagles fan. We talked about them a little bit on the phone this week, and I was telling him I think the Eagles have a chance to reel off some wins and get hot. So we'll see what happens. All right, so Tampa I had moving down 1 from the week before, but I still have them up 8 for the year. And I just want to go double check what happened with the Bucks the week before. Oh, that's right. They played Monday night against the Ravens, and they basically got their butts kicked, and then the Ravens let them back into the game. But it was never really in doubt, honestly. I mean, they were down I think 3 or 4 scores, and then were kind of furiously starting to try and make a comeback there. But I don't really feel like it was ever truly going to happen. Now, obviously, as we know, Chris Godwin is out for the year with that ugly ankle injury at the end of the game there, and then Evans with the hamstring, he's going to be out for a while. So that offense, with as good as they've looked and with as good as Mayfield has looked, they're going to take a little bit of a hit offensively, and so they could be dropping more, but we'll see what happens with them. I wanted to take a look at who they were playing this week. They actually are playing at home against the Falcons. This is a really crucial divisional test for them, so I'm really curious to see how they play. Next up at 10, we have Cincinnati. They're actually up 2 from the week before, and they are overall down 4 for the year. They are starting to put it together now. Okay, so let's see what the Bengals are up to. I think they had a nice win. Not a nice win. They were able to pull out a win against the Browns, but it was on the road, and the Browns still have a great defense. And Stefanski is not incompetent at coach, so obviously the Browns lost Watson to an Achilles injury in that game. I think that's probably a blessing in disguise for them. They can kind of take a deep sigh of relief and be like, okay, we don't have to think about this guy anymore. Let's move forward with the team we have. But still, Speaking of the Bengals, I felt like that was a pretty decent win for them, so I had them moving up 2. They're back into the top 10 for me, and they're starting to turn their season around now. Okay, Houston, I have at 11 now. They're up 2 from last week, and they're up 5 overall for the year. Finally, after them hanging kind of in that 16 to 20 range, I finally have them moving up more and more. And yes, I know they're coming off a loss to Green Bay, but prior to that, they had been playing really, really well. So I continue to move them up. So 11 for Houston. Dallas I have at 12. They're down 2 from last week, even though they were on a bye, but they deserve to move down further. They've been playing like crap, and they are down 5 for the year. The Steelers I have at 13. They're up 3 from last week, and that actually makes them up 5 for the year. What did the Steelers do last week? I think they had a really nice win. They beat up on somebody. Who was it? It was the Jets. Yeah, and the Jets came into that game with all of this emotional momentum, right? With the Adams addition and then the Reddick signing. Now, he didn't play in the game, but still they were feeling really good about that. And so, I mean, the line even, I think the line had the Jets favored in Pittsburgh, and I think some of it also had to do with Wilson starting for the first time this year. People didn't really know what to think about that, but I'm telling you, the Jets will continue to be overrated. I couldn't believe that I was able. I mean, I didn't win. I didn't go 5-0 on my Fermented Five, but I got that pick right because I was like, I couldn't believe that the Steelers were getting points at home to the Jets, and I took that one as a part of my Fermented Five, and they proved they're a much better team than the Jets. So, I have them moving up 3 to 13. All right, the Rams. I have them moving up 1 from the week before. I think they had a close win. Forget who that was. Oh yeah, a close win against the Raiders at home. They had been struggling again. They were without their 2-star receivers. Obviously, you see what that offense can do with those guys back in the lineup. McVay is still a great coach. Stafford is still a great quarterback. I will probably end up moving them up a little bit more because of that nice win against the Vikings on Thursday. But we'll see those power rankings when they come out before Week 9. And that has them. I started them at 8, so they're down 6 for the year, but they're starting to slowly crawl their way back into it. Okay. I have this is kind of interesting. I have the Saints in a free fall down to 15, which is actually only down 1 for the year because I had moved them up so heavily early in the year. And you combine just maybe like the schedule getting harder, injuries, and just other things. Maybe they just were playing over their heads. And that Dallas win not being as impressive as we thought it was. So the Saints I finally have starting to slide out. They will probably continue to slide, but we'll see what they do. So down 4 from the week before, but only down 1 for the year. And just to kind of go back and look, oh, that's right, they lost the Thursday nighter to the Broncos pretty handily. And then we will see what they can accomplish this week. They are actually at the Chargers. That's kind of an interesting game because the Chargers are also kind of a team in flux right now. So it's 2 teams that could really use a win, I think, and a defining win, in fact. But anyway, the Saints are in a free fall. And then you have right behind them, you have the Commanders who are shooting up the board. They absolutely annihilated whoever they played. I think it was the Panthers. 40-7. Holy cow, what a win. Now, the reason why I actually think that the Commanders are dogs at home this week, and I think it's because there's questions about whether or not Jaden Daniels is going to play. So we'll find out if he plays. But when he's in the lineup, they're really good. So I expect to see them to continue to move up this board. I think that Mariota is a really capable backup quarterback. I don't think that removes them from being an explosive offense, but it doesn't take away from them still being a good team. So I expect Washington to continue to move up. So they're up 4 from the week before, and they're actually up 13 overall for the year. So they're rolling. The Chargers, I moved down 3. That loss to the Cardinals. I mean, even though it was in Arizona, and I know the Cardinals can sometimes perk up and have a seems like they're getting better at winning close games, and Murray can still break off explosive plays. But the Chargers, I'm still waiting for them. Harbaugh's known for being gritty and having his teams ready to play and always playing it close to the vest. But they haven't really had like any kind of a defining win yet this year where you're like, oh, there's that Chargers team we've been looking for. So, and Herbert just looks like he never is kind of in the same way that we keep waiting for Lawrence in Jacksonville to just finally like put it all together and become this elite quarterback the way that Mahomes did and Lamar Jackson did and Josh Allen did and even Joe Burrow. So we're just kind of waiting. So for now, with that loss, I have the Chargers down 3. They're down to 17. I have them down 4 for the year. They need to show me more. Chicago, they were on a bye. Just based on the way things moved around, I had to move them down 1. I'm still waiting to see more. They've played some soft teams this year. They've had some nice wins. I get that. I need to see more from Chicago. And I feel like that thought process has paid off for me so far, because there have been teams, and one coming up right now actually in Atlanta, where I've been kind of wait and see on them because I need to see more, and then sure enough, they'll let you down. Same thing happened with Seattle, and maybe like one or two others where I've kind of like been wait and see mode. And I probably should have used that strategy with the Saints, which I didn't. So I kind of regret that one, because the Saints have burned me a couple times on picks with me thinking a little bit too highly of them. So anyway, Bears at 18, down 1 for the week, and that's actually down 3 overall for the year, which, again, I know it's weird. I know you're going to say it's me being a Vikings fan, and yes, I do actually don't like the Bears. Even more so than the Packers, honestly. The Bears are the one team in the league that I want to beat the most. Just based on their history, with just they have this luckiness about them with defensive and special teams touchdowns. It's like I don't know where that good karma, that charmed luck comes from, but it bothers me. Anyway, Chicago at 18. Okay, Atlanta down 1, down to 19. That actually puts them back to where I started them at the year. Just a super middle of the pack team, plays close games, win some, lose some. They put up great stats. They can look really good at times. They can look really bad at times. They got their doors blown off by Seattle, which brings me to Seattle. Seattle up 2, back up to 20, which is has them even for the year. So they started out the year hot, 3-0, then lost 3 in a row, and then came back and looked really good against Atlanta. So, well, again, I got, 3, 4, wait and see kind of teams all in a row right here, just kind of middle of the pack. All right, Miami down 2 to 21 from last week, which has them down overall 11 for the year, one of my biggest fallers. And that's because of the quarterback situation. Obviously, we know that Tua is back, and we could see the old Dolphins come back this week. But for now, I've got to see it. So right now, they're 21. All right, Indianapolis, they're at 22. They're down 1 for the year, down 1 from last week. They're playing about where I thought they'd play. Their next game, actually, who are they playing this week? Let's pull up the schedule real quick. They are at the Texans. So if they manage to win that game, I'd be impressed. But I think the Texans will handle them. Richardson's back, but I got to tell you, he is not developing, man. He's a great athlete, but he's not developing as a quarterback so far. I really thought he was going to be a really, really good quarterback. I missed the mark on that guy. At least so far. I mean, he still has a chance. I mean, we saw Josh Allen. He looked terrible his first couple of years, and then finally it clicked and he turned it on. So for now, just kind of lack of really good quarterback play, and just kind of a lack of overall roster talent has them kind of hanging in the early 20s. All right. Jacksonville, I have hanging tight at 23. They're probably my biggest faller of the year. Down from 9 is where I started them out. So that's a drop of 14 so far this year. They finally had a nice win in London. Finally. But they needed it badly. And it was against the Patriots, and that's why I couldn't really move them, because I'm like, yeah, you were desperate and you beat the Patriots. So Lawrence and that entire team, they've got to show me way, way more for me to start to move them up. All right, Denver's up 2. They're starting to get hot. They're starting to look much better. They're up 2 for the year, up 2 for the week. Bo Nix is starting to look better. I wouldn't want him to be my quarterback, that's for sure. But he's doing all right, and the defense is playing really well, and they're starting to run the ball better. So I got to move it up a little bit. We'll see. Arizona, I have hanging at 25, which is up 2 for the year. I can't give them, when they're pulling out these last-second wins, even though they're against good teams. That's another team like the Chargers, even though they just beat the Chargers. But you need to have like a defining win for me to start to move you up. All right, the Jets I have down 2 with that loss to the Steelers, and that's actually down 4 for the year. Vegas I have hanging tight at 27. I think they took a big loss to somebody, which was not a big loss, right? I talked about it. It was the Rams, but still a loss nonetheless. And their quarterback situation is just probably one of the worst in the league. The Giants I have hanging tight at 28. They lost big to the Eagles. They're up 2 for the year because they have shown a little bit of moxie. The defensive line's been playing really good. But Daniel Jones, he got benched at some point in that game, and so, I think the Giants just are who they thought we were. And in fact, my final, 6 are all unmoved, right? So Tennessee at 29, Cleveland at 30, New England at 31, Carolina at 32. I don't think any of those teams had good showings. Carolina lost to the Commanders. New England lost to the Jaguars. Cleveland lost to the Bengals. Tennessee, I forget what happened with Tennessee. I'm sure nothing good. They lost big to the Bills. So, and then the Giants lost big to the Eagles. Vegas lost a kind of a close one to the Rams. So there's your bottom 6, and yeah, not too impressive. That's probably, with the exception of maybe a team like Arizona or Jacksonville or somebody sliding, that's probably going to be your top 6 draft picks right there in some kind of various order. All right, so now we can actually move over to the weekly picks segment. I actually wanted to just talk about my pick results from last week, just real quick. I was wrong about the Saints, wrong about the Falcons, and wrong about the Chargers. I also thought that the Packers would cover the 3.5. They did not. They won on a last-second field goal. I thought the Dolphins would actually. So with the Colts being favored by 3.5, I thought the Dolphins would cover that. They ended up losing by 6. The Rams I thought would cover. They were up by 8, and then Pierce decided to kick a field goal with 2 and change to go to cut it to 5. That really, really annoyed me. It ended up not. I ended up losing 2 on my Fermented 5, but at the moment, I thought that had totally obliterated my Fermented 5. So anyway, just a weird coaching decision by Pierce. I love him as a culture guy, but man, his decision making in game is ugh. Okay, and then the Bucks. They got blown out by Baltimore and then made it close, and I think ended up losing by 10. I thought they would cover the 4.5. I thought that would be a much closer game, but obviously it wasn't. So, and maybe the Evans injury. I mean, they couldn't play any defense. The Ravens are just such a juggernaut. Who can play defense against that team? They're incredible. Or where are we at? 31 minutes. We're not going to do a full hour, but it'll be maybe 40, 45 minutes. So anyway, so that's how my work looked. I was 12-3 straight up. I'm 70-37 overall for the year, which is 65.4%, which is almost, I'm picking about 2/3 straight up. I was 8-7 against the spread last week, which drops me a little. I'm now 60-47 overall against the spread, which is 56%. And I've looked this up once before. They say that when it comes to betting against the spread, people are usually somewhere between 55 and 60%. And if you have over 60% success, then you're really good at what you do. So I'm kind of like just right in the pack. So hopefully I start to get better about that. And then my Fermented 5 went 3-2. So I got the Eagles cover right. I got the Commanders cover right, even with it being 10. I got the Steelers winning outright. That was an easy one. My Rams cover of 7 got ruined by Antonio Pierce, and then my Chargers cover wasn't even going to happen. They were up by only 1 at the end before the Cardinals kicked the game-winning field goal. So I was close on that one, but no cigar. So I'm 21-14 overall at exactly 60% on my Fermented 5 so far this year. So it is a little bit, it's a 4% uptick from my against the spread, which means that yes, I am seeing things a little bit better when I pick on the Fermented 5. And I'm trying to get my process even more streamlined and more tight, so I can start to do better. Because, man, I would love to win some money again. Again, week 1, I won close to $500, and I haven't won since. So I would love to get some more money. So hopefully, and I will be showing you what we're going to be trying with here on my weekly picks. So I went on to Twitter and I said that I picked the Vikings to win and to cover. The spread was at, I think, 2.5 at the time. I think it moved to 1.5 at some point. But as we know, the Vikings lost by 10. So clearly no win, no cover. So I'm 0-1 on the week in both areas. All right. So starting off here, we have Eagles at Bengals. Interesting game. The Bengals are actually favored at home by 2.5. My spread actually came out Eagles by 2. So I have the Eagles winning this. And I have the Eagles taking those points and winning outright. Then you have Ravens at Browns. Ironically, the Ravens are only favored by 8. I thought it would have been more, but my spread came out Baltimore by 10.5, so I have Baltimore winning and covering. Titans at Lions. This is the biggest spread of the week, I believe. Lions by 12 at home, which rightfully so. They're probably going to kill them. My spread came out Detroit by 22.5, which means I am picking the Lions to both win and cover. I'm not betting on this game though, because I have kind of like a caveat in my betting rules, is that if I have a team ranked like a certain distance more than the other team, it's too obvious of a pick. I got burned by that on so many occasions last year. I was like, oh, well, clearly this really high ranked team is going to annihilate this really low ranked team. And somehow in the NFL, those teams seem to keep the games a little bit closer than you imagine. So in our minds right now, we're thinking there's no way the Titans can keep the game close against the Lions, right? And then you'll be looking at the game in the fourth quarter, and it'll be like 21-17. You're like, how did that happen? So that's kind of how things go. So I've taught myself to not bet on those style of games. So I did not include, even though I really wanted to, I did not include this Detroit game in my Fermented Five. But they're still going to get the win in the cover, in my opinion. Okay, Cardinals at Dolphins. Here's a couple of teams, just like in that Saints-Chargers game that could use kind of a defining win. Dolphins favored by 4.5 at home with Tua coming back. My spread actually came out with a push, so I will pick the Dolphins to win the game, but I do have the Cardinals covering the 4.5 points. Okay, next up we have Jets at Patriots. Jets favored by 7. Okay. Keep believing in the Jets. So, my spread came out Jets by 2, which means I do have the Jets winning the game, but it'll be a close one. I have the Patriots actually covering. Okay. Next up, we have the Saints at the Chargers. Chargers favored by 7 at home. I actually came out with a push, so I'm going to take the Chargers to win it, but I'm going to have the Saints covering that 7 points. And in fact, that's another one I put down as a no, because I do not, even though I like the Saints there for the cover, I do not like betting on weird quarterback situations. So with Rattler, Carr maybe coming back, maybe not. I don't know. I don't like betting on that kind of stuff, so I left that one out. Okay. Bills at Seahawks. I have Seahawks are dogs by 3 at home. My spread came out Bills by 9.5, so I got the Bills with the win. I got the Bills with the cover on the road. Panthers at Broncos. Broncos favored by 11. That's crazy to have a Broncos team with an 11-point spread. But ironically, my spread came out at 15, so I have the Broncos actually winning and covering that. We'll find out. I would love it if Bryce Young had a coming out game. That would really be fun, and I think he deserves it. He seems like a really good kid. I would love for him to have some success in this league. Okay, Chiefs at Raiders. Raiders dogs by 9.5 at home. My spread actually came out Chiefs by 9.5, which means I'm going to take the Chiefs to win, but for the spread, it's a push for me, so I'm going to go ahead and take the Chiefs to cover the 9.5, but it's a close one for me. I think the Raiders will be right there. Not in terms of winning, but in terms of covering. Okay, and then you have a really interesting game on Sunday night, I believe, which is Cowboys at Niners. Two teams looking to bounce back. Niners are favored by 5 at home. My spread came out Niners by 3.5, so I have the Niners winning, but I do have the Cowboys covering. All right, and now it's time for... Let's bring it back to me, friends. Let's move this out, and let's run our Fermented Five.
Fermented Five.
All right, back to me. Let's come back over here to the spreadsheet. Okay, and let's do our Fermented Five. Here are the 5. We have Falcons at Bucks. The Bucks are actually dogs by 2.5 at home. I get it. They lost Godwin. They lost Evans. My spread, actually, I think highly of the Bucks. My spread came out at 13, so I have the Bucks taking those 2.5 points and winning this game outright. Next up, we have Packers at Jaguars. Jaguars are 4-point dogs at home. I've got the Packers by 12, so I have the Packers winning and covering the 4 on the road. Next up, we have Colts at Texans. Texans favored by 5 at home. My spread came out 13, so I've got the Texans winning and covering at home over the Colts. Next up, we have Bears at Commanders. For some reason, the Commanders... are dogs by 2 at home to the Bears. Vegas likes the Bears as well. My spread came out 6 in favor of the Commanders, so I have the Commanders taking those 2 points and winning that game outright at home over the Bears. And then finally, we have the Giants at the Steelers. Steelers favored by 5.5 at home. I had a huge spread on this one. I think the Steelers will win by 3 touchdowns. So I came out at 22 points. So I have the Steelers, in my opinion, easily winning, easily covering. So there's your Fermented Five. So we did a scolding. Bring it back to me. We did a scolding. We did the power rankings. We did the picks. We did the Fermented Five. I think I covered everything. So like we say on this show, guys, before I say it, actually, it's early Sunday. We have 1 hour before game time. I'm gonna get this posted probably in just the nick of time. But enjoy the games today, even though the Vikings aren't playing. So anyway, play vicious, be victorious. Peace.